This video is going to discuss street outreach projects and the data entry practices that follows the initial contact with a client. So when you initially have contact with a client, a lot of times you do not gain or obtain all of the necessary information, or the client states that they prefer not to engage in services. So you are missing a lot of data points on the entry assessment. Through street outreach projects, you will consistently try to engage and obtain documented information for an individual or family you're working with who are living in an unsheltered situation. When you obtain more of that information, you're going to add it to the project entry. How you do that is to go to the entry exit tab for your specific provider. Make sure again to change your entered data as before you do this. To update the assessment information for a client, you would simply click on the pencil next to the project start date. You will see your project start data show up with the start date. You're going to save and continue. And then once that happens, whatever data you've obtained since then, since your initial contact, you will add to the entry assessment. So this includes a date of birth, if you have it for the client, if you're able to obtain the full date of birth, maybe you have obtained their race information, so you're going to add that, your gender information, so you're going to add that, a disabling condition, so if they identify a disabling condition, so all of this information you will add as you go through your time and engagement with the client, and hopefully helping them service-wise. As you scroll down, there's other street outreach specific data points that are really important to identify. One of them has to do with the date of engagement. So as you engage the client, as you gain this information, once a client's information or most of their entry assessment information has been obtained, and the client is willing to engage in services and service plan development to obtain housing, you're going to add what's called a date of engagement. If through the initial contact, you don't have a date of engagement and the client isn't willing, you'll skip that on the entry assessment. After the date of engagement has been obtained, you're going to note that if it's not the same as the project start date in interim reviews. So interim reviews are also important for street outreach providers when trying to note and document your current living situations or your unsheltered documentation. So you're going to go ahead and add an interim review. All the interim reviews are going to be done as update assessments after the client's initial start date. You're going to save and continue. So updating all of this information after the initial assessment is completed. You're going to make sure to follow up and add any of this information as well. You're going to also, whenever you do an interim review, you're going to add a current living situation documentation, adding the start date, end date, information date. You're going to identify any current living situation, what the current living situation was on that date. So if they were in a place that meant for human habitation, or this time maybe they were saying they were staying or living in a friend's room for the past couple of days because it was snowing outside and they didn't want to sleep under the bridge. You're going to identify the living situation verified by who. So your specific provider is going to be the verification project. And then you're going to answer, is the client going to have to leave their current living situation within 14 days? So asking the person, you said you were staying with your friend, are they going to let you, are they going to have you or make you leave within 14 days? They could say yes or no. If they say yes, you're going to answer these next 4 questions. Do they have a subsequent residence already identified? This meaning residents would be in another temporary or in a permanent housing situation. Not if they're going to go back out on the streets or staying in their tent or sleeping under the bridge. That's not considered a residence. So maybe no, because if they left their friends, they'd go back to their unsheltered location. Does the individual family have resources or support networks to obtain other permanent housing? Yes or no. Has the client had a lease or ownership interest in a permanent housing unit in the last 60 days? Yes or no. So maybe at this point, yes. Now they, or no, they have an interest or ownership interest. They don't have any of those, but maybe now they have an interest in obtaining those. So that would be great. Has the client moved 2 or more times in the last 60 days? So maybe they've had multiple stays in different places, or they went to the shelter. Yes or no. And then any location details, which might be helpful in order for other street outreach providers to find this individual. And then you're going to save. So always in those interim reviews, documenting your interactions and your verification of the person's living situation each and every time. The date of engagement is also something you're going to be adding in an interim review if you didn't have the ability to obtain engagement at the initial contact. So the date of engagement will happen when you have almost all of the information that's located on your entry assessments and the individual has agreed to successful service planning and has agreed to start working on housing. There is a place for personal telephone number. If for some reason they have a telephone number, we can either leave messages or maybe they have their own individual phone you can call as well. So you can add that also. So once you have completed your current living situation, updated any information within the interim assessment, you're going to go ahead and save and exit. And now you can see that your interim review has been done. Once you continue to work with a client, you'll continue each time you have interactions with the client to add another interim review, document the current living situation, and update and add any of the information located on the assessments. And that concludes today's video.